Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about your artist analysis, and obviously, this is a bit that worries some people about having to write lots and lots about their chosen artists or designers. But what I've tried to do is break down this section into a series of easy enough headings that you will then be able to start to develop some analysis from. All of this has been taken from a website which is very, very helpful. It's the studentartguide.com, and there's an article on there which describes how to analyse your artwork in some detail. So you should now really have identified your 4 artists or designers or groups or companies that you're going to use to do your analysis and your responses. The next stage is to create responses, okay, which I'll talk to you about in another video. And the next one will be thinking about producing your analysis, which is what I'm going to explain to you today. So I'll first explain how to go about writing about your artists and designers. The best website I've found to help you with this is here, but I will explain in detail what each section means based on an example. Okay, so here's a student's artist analysis, and it's also got their response. Okay, the Great Plateau. They've produced a poster based on Henry Rivers. And what they've done is they've produced some examples of the work itself. They've done some analysis, and they've also talked about how they produced their response, okay, along with screenshots and the actual final piece. Okay, now that's just one response. What I'm asking you to do is produce up to 5 responses for each of your chosen artists. So it's about 20 pieces of artwork in total. So when we're talking about artists, we want to really think about how we're going to analyse their work. Okay, so I don't like this or I like this without any further explanation is not analysis. Okay, your personal opinions must be supported with an explanation, evidence, or some sort of justification. Okay. So analysis of the artwork doesn't mean a description of the artwork. Okay, it's not describing it. It must move beyond stating the obvious, and you must try and add some perceptive, personal insight. Okay, so you want to demonstrate, certainly in A-level, some higher order thinking, the ability to analyse, evaluate, and synthesise information and ideas. For example, if a colour has been used to create strong contrasts in certain areas of the artwork, you might want to follow this, although you might want to think about, why this is the case. Perhaps a deliberate attempt by the artist to draw attention to a focal point. Okay, so it's not just kind of describing that's what it is, why has it been done that way? Okay, so you want to try and cover a range of different visual elements and design principles, okay, so that you're not just looking at colour as one idea, okay, and just describing the colour in a piece of work. You want to describe a range of, okay. Now, you want to try and see in your art analysis, you try and cover a range of these, and I've put a list of them on this page, so it should help you. Context, content, meaning, composition, form, structure, layout, line, shape and form, value, tone, light, colour, hue, space, materials, and how you created your responses. Okay, so that's really what we want to try and cover. Now, you don't have to do all of these, okay? Some of them you might not be able to write very much about. Certainly with certain bits of artwork, it might be difficult, okay? Try and see whether you can put your artist's work next to your analysis. So when you're actually talking about one particular piece of artwork, you're referring to the picture next to the work itself when you start thinking about your presentation. So, when we start to think about writing this, you've got to really look at the artwork in some detail, okay? And when you're starting to think about your work, start thinking about the work itself in terms of content, context, and meaning. So that's going to be our first thing, okay? So the subject matter, okay, is going to be the first thing you need to look at. And I've given an example here of a piece of artwork by Janine Ruel, which is a repeat pattern, sort of Christmassy sort of style picture. And I was going to use that as sort of an example to help us out with this. So there can be different competing and contradictory interpretations of the same artwork. You might look at a piece of artwork and someone else might have a completely different opinion of the work itself, but that's fine. Okay, that's perfectly fine. You may come up with particular assumptions about a piece of artwork that no one else has thought of before. Okay, it may be you pick an artist and you can't find much about how they did it, how they produced the work. That's also fine, because then you can start making some choices and some assumptions yourself about the work. Okay, so does the artwork fall within an established genre? Okay, is it historical, mythical, religious? Is it portraiture? Is it pattern design? Is it logo design? Is it fantasy art? Are there any recognisable objects, places or scenes in the picture? Okay, has it been stylised? Is it realistic? Is it distorted? Is it exaggerated? Is it reflected? Is it repeated? And in this instance, it does look like it's repeated. Have people been included? What can we tell about them? Okay, their identity, their age, what they're wearing, their professional, their cultural connections, health, family relationships. What can we learn from their pose? Are they happy? Are they in the front pose? And their profile? They're partly turned? Or what's their body language? Okay. What props and important elements are included? In this instance, there's other buildings, there's trees, there's shapes, there's drapery, there's architectural elements, emblems, logos and motifs. How do aspects of the setting support the primary subject? Well, the people are always bigger than the buildings themselves. Okay, so when we're talking about the content, what's actually there and why has it been arranged the way it has? So, does the artwork communicate an action, a narrative or a story? In an illustration, it will be a story or a narrative. Okay, historical event or illustrate a scene from a story. Has the arrangement been embellished, set up or contrived? For instance, in this instance, it may well be that it's telling a story over a range of different scenes. Does the artwork explore movement? In this one, it's quite static. But do you gain a sense that parts of the artwork are about to change, topple or fall? Tension, suspense. Does the artwork capture objects in motion, blurred edges, scenes frozen in mid-action, live performance art, video art? What kind of abstract elements are shown? Bars, shapes, splashes and lines. Does the artwork include appropriation by the work of other artists within a parody or pop art? What effect does this have? Does this artwork captivate an instinctual response, such as items that are informative, shocking, and threatening for humans, i.e. in dangerous places, abnormally positioned items, human faces, the gaze of people in motion? What kind of text has been used? In this instance it hasn't, but if you're producing an analysis of some packaging design, it will. Where does the font go? What's the font size, the font weight? Is it stenciled, is it hand-drawn, is it computer generated or printed? What's influenced this choice of text with the work itself? Do key objects or images have symbolic value or provide a clue to meaning? How does the artwork convey deeper conceptual themes? What tone of voice does the artwork have? In this instance, it's quite happy, but other bits of artwork may be autobiographical, direct, unflinching, confronting, subtle, ambiguous, satirical, propagandistic. So, is it angry? Is it sad? What's your emotional artwork in that response? So, what's the overall mood? Is it energetic, positive, exciting, serious, sedate, peaceful, calm, melancholic, tense, uneasy, uplifting, foreboding, calm or turbulent? Does the title of the artwork change the way you interpret the work? That might be difficult to find, especially with graphic design, but more fine-arted piece of work may have a title. What are the design constraints relating to the subject matter or theme? Was it commissioned to represent a specific subject, place or idea? Then you might look into the context, wider contexts. So, supported by research, can you identify when, where and why the work was created and what its purpose was? So if it's been produced for a book or a book cover, or it's been produced as an illustration for a particular time or space, why was it done that way? which events and surrounding environments have been influenced this work. So maybe if it was produced around the time of the Vietnam War or World War II, then there may be events that have influenced the artwork in the time period itself. Can you make connections to other artworks that may have inspired this piece of work? Can you make any relevant connections to other fields of study of expression? So is there any subjects that might be in it? So geography, maths, literature, film, music, history or science. Maybe you can link it to some other subjects as well. Which key biographical details about the artist are relevant? Now sometimes we don't really want to go too much into the artist's background. I don't really want to know what his dog was called or any other sort of trivial information. Really I want to know about the artist, why those particular artist's elements are important to the work. So if it's an autobiographical piece of work about their family or relationships, their psychological state, then that might help us understand the work. Is the piece of artwork that you've chosen part of a larger body of work? So maybe they've done other bits of work in the same style. How might your own upbringing, beliefs and biases distort your interpretation of the artwork? That's a tricky one. So now we're going to look at the composition of the form. What's the overall size, shape and the composition of the artwork? Is it vertical, horizontal, portraiture? What other things have helped us identify? Is it A4, is it A3? How do the images fit within the frame? In this instance they've been cropped and it's sort of, you imagine it's going on much further. Is it a diptych or a triptych? That's a series of 2 or a series of 3. Where are the boundaries of the artwork? Does the artwork have a fixed, permanent, or is it modified or moved? How does the scale and format of the artwork relate to the environment where it was positioned? The structure and the layout. Has the artwork been organised using a formal system of arrangement or mathematical proportion, for instance the rule of thirds, the golden ratio or the spirals? Can you see a clear intention with alignment and positioning of the parts of the image within the artwork? Are the edges aligned? Items spaced equally? Simple or complex arrangement? Overlapping? Clustered or concentrated objects? Separated on? Repetition of forms? Certainly within this one. What effect do these visual devices have? Does the artwork have a primary axis of symmetry? So in this instance, the symmetrical lines may happen outside of the image itself. Is it vertical, diagonal, horizontal? Certainly within repeat patterns, that's going to be important. Can you draw a diagram to illustrate emphasis on dominance? Blocking in mass where the heavier dominant elements of the image appear. How do your eyes move through the composition? Where are your eyes drawn to? Could your own artwork use a similar organisational structure? Line. What type of line marks are used? Is it thick, thin, short, long, soft, bold, delicate, feathery, indistinct, faint, intermittent, jagged, spiky and sharp? Are there any interrupted, suggested or implied lines? What are the dominating lines in terms of the composition? Is it repeated lines, boundary lines, leading lines? Where is our eyes drawn to? Are there any parallel lines within the image? Horizontal, vertical lines. Horizontal lines may create a sense of stability and permanence. Parallel lines may create a sense of depth or movement through space within a landscape. Vertical lines may suggest height, reaching upwards or falling. Intersected, perpendicular lines may suggest rigidity and strength. Abstract lines may balance the composition out, or create contrast or emphasis. Angular diagonal lines may suggest tension or unease. So sometimes it's important to have a look at these things to kind of give an idea about how that's working within the work itself. Shape and form. Can you identify a dominant visual language within the shapes and forms? So are they geometric? In this instance, there are geometric forms going on. Circular edges in all of those elements are bringing our lines in. The diagonal edges or the spiky edges are the dress, but mainly it's curved to kind of give us sort of a happy mood. So angular, rectangular, irregular, complex, minimal. Why was this language used? Okay. I think in this instance it's been used to kind of create a nice happy atmosphere, so it's going to be something that people want to use, or maybe it's a design for a book cover or a wraparound of a pencil case, for instance, which is happy. How are the edges of forms treated? In this instance, they're not ripped or torn, but they're curved. Are there any three-dimensional forms or relief elements? Well, there's a bit of shading going on with this, which is kind of giving us an impression of three-dimensional elements, although the objects are flat. Is there variety or repetition in the shapes and forms? Certainly here things are repeated, or at least the colours are repeated, if not the shapes. How are the shapes organised? Well, a lot of effort has been gone into thinking about where those things are going and where they're intersecting. Are any silhouettes used? Are forms designed with ergonomics or human scale in mind? Well, that's not important here. Things are bigger and smaller. Trees are smaller or bigger than people. Can you identify which forms are functional or structural versus ornamental or decorative? Have any forms been disassembled or cut away or exposed? That might be useful for illustrations of sides of buildings to look inside something. Then we're going to look at value, tone and light. Has a wide tonal range been used in the artwork? In this instance, there are tones within the the shapes, the flat shapes, which have got darker and lighter edges. Pale and faint, subdued, dull, brooding and dark. Where are the light sources within the artwork or scene? That's tricky here, but it might be in other ones. Are representations of three-dimensional objects and figures flat or tonally modelled? Certainly here they are. Are there any unusual, reflective or transparent surfaces? Has tone been used to help communicate atmospheric perspective? Are gallery or environmental light sources where the artwork is displayed, accepting onto the artwork itself? Are shadows depicted within the artwork? Has tone been used to help direct the viewer's attention to focal areas? Then we're going to look at colour and hue. Can you view the true colour of the artwork? Certain colours change when it's produced in different areas, on websites or in galleries. Which colour schemes have been used in the artwork? Is it harmonious, complementary, primary, monochrome, earthy, warm, cool and cold? Has the artist used a broad or limited colour palette? Well, it's certainly a limited colour palette here. How would you describe the intensity of the colours? Vibrant, bright, vivid, glowing, pure, saturated, strong, dull, muted, pale, subdued, bleached, diluted. Are colours transparent or opaque? Can you see reflected colour? Has colour contrast been used within the artwork? What's the effect of these colour choices? Texture, surface and pattern. Are there any interesting textural, tactile or surface qualities within the artwork? For instance, bumpy, grooved, indented, scratched, stressed, roughed, smooth, shiny, varnished, glossy, polished, matte, sandy textures. How has this been used? Space. Is the space shallow or deep? How does the artwork create an illusion of depth? Has an unusual viewpoint been used? A worm's eye view, an aerial view, looking out a window, through a doorway, a scene reflected in a mirror or a shiny surface? Is the emphasis on mass or void? What's the surrounding shape? Is it compact, crowdy, busy, densely populated with little surrounding space? It is here, it's very busy. How has the artwork engaged with real space in and around the artwork? Would it be appropriate to use space in a similar way within your own artwork? Materials is going to be important. So what materials and mediums has the artwork been constructed from? Have materials been concealed or presented deceptively? Is there an authenticity or honesty of materials? Are materials celebrated? Is the structure visible or exposed? So in this instance it's obviously digital, but with certain paintings, can you see it's been painted? Which skills, techniques, methods and processes were used? It's important to note that we really don't want to go into a long technical process, but rather just to see personal observations and how processes affect and influence the artist in question. Would replicating part of the artwork help you to gain a better understanding of the processes used? So maybe one of your responses you could just do a small copy instead of just doing a response. Has the artwork been built up in layers? How does the use of materials help the artist communicate ideas? Are these methods useful for your own project? Okay. The final stage is how you created your responses. So you looked at the artwork itself. Now is the time to turn your work into something which is similar to the artist's work themselves. So write about the process that you went to create your bits of artwork. Now, hopefully this should go into some detail. If you want to have a look in more detail, the Student Art Guide website there is very, very good and gives you a very clear, precise guide to what I've just been talking about there. But hopefully this should help you with your artwork analysis. Thanks very much, everybody. Speak to you soon.